So, Mother was once asked, what is it that will help me always remember that I'm living a spiritual life? That was the question put to her, and she answered, the awareness of the divine presence in all things and always. So if we can maintain an awareness of the divine presence in all things and always, according to Mother, that's the parameter of leading a spiritual life. And what does it mean to maintain an awareness of the divine presence in all things? Firstly, what is the divine presence in all things? So there's one way of living, the way we live most of our lives, seeing things through our senses, perceiving things, forming our judgments about it, and living life based on that narrative. And there's another way of living when we see beyond appearances, when we somewhere sense that this world is not what it appears to be, that behind everything there is a presence, there is an intelligence, that everything in our life is somewhere controlled by that higher intelligence. When we somewhere forget about that, hey, hi, when we forget about that higher intelligence, then you can sit here if you need a backrest, or there, wherever you like. So when we forget about that higher intelligence, we tend to live life with a lot of fear, with a lot of anxiety, because we feel alone, we feel cut off from the whole, we feel if there's a problem, I have to solve it myself because I'm alone, I have to survive it myself. But when we are living from that other dimension where we somehow know that there is an intelligence, a higher intelligence which is controlling everything, which is everything, which is the inner controller, the Antaryami, which is making everything happen, it gives a lightness to the tread with which we walk life. So I was mentioning in class this morning that Bruce Lipton has written a beautiful book called The Biology of Belief. You should read it if you like books which are a beautiful combination of science and spirituality. You'll enjoy it very much. Bruce Lipton's Biology of Belief. So he's given an example in that book that they once did an experiment where they got a set of people together. Half the people were given red tinted glasses and half the people were given green tinted glasses, and they were shown the same picture. It was a picture of a landscape with a house, and they were asked, how many of you see love in this picture, and how many of you see fear in this picture? They were asked that question. And all the ones who'd worn the red glasses, their hand went up when they were asked, how many of you see love? And when they were asked, how many of you see fear, all the ones who'd worn green, their hand went up. Then what they did in the experiment is they swapped. The one who'd worn red glasses, they were made to wear green glasses, and vice versa. And the same people who had seen fear in the picture displayed, when they wore the red tinted glasses, they saw love. Now the picture was what it was. The picture represents our life. Our life is what it is. But if you see it through the green glasses of your ego, you'll see fear, anxiety, trauma. But if you see it through the red tinted glasses of the heart, which actually senses a all protecting, all loving presence everywhere in all things, the same scene becomes beautiful, a scene which is loving. So there's a very sweet story of a fictitious character called Mullah Nasruddin. So Mullah Nasruddin was once told that his wife is having an affair, and he first didn't believe, because he says, how can my wife have an affair? And the man said, okay, you don't believe me. Every evening your wife meets her lover at the stroke of midnight near this tree at the outskirts of the village. So you go and see for yourself. So Mullah Nasruddin reaches by 11:30. He climbs the tree and he wants to catch them red-handed, and he's building up all, I'll pulverize my wife's lover like this, I'll do this to my wife, let me just catch them. And he was so sort of entranced by this narrative that in anger he was jumping branch to branch, because he was a very passionate man and the thought of his wife having an affair was driving him nuts. So this frenzy built up and built up till at 5 to 12 a phenomenal thing happened. Suddenly it hit him, but I'm not married. So this is a funny story, but this Mullah Nasruddin, what does he represent? Your thinking self. So Mullah Nasruddin is the picture, okay, the picture that was displayed. But when he puts on the green glasses of the ego, he believes whatever narrative the ego tells him. Here the man told him your wife was married, but sometimes our ego tells us so many things that makes us see enemies that don't exist, and we believe it blindly. So this story is reminding us, it's a beautiful story to remember how Mullah Nasruddin remembers, but I'm not married. It's beautiful to remember, but I'm not this I, which is constantly spinning this narrative and that narrative and feeling terrified by this and feeling terrified by that. Actually, beyond this appearance of I am that one reality that makes up everything. So that's what for those of you who came late, I'll repeat what we started with. Mother was asked, what is it that will help me always remember that I'm living a spiritual life? And Mother said, the awareness of the divine presence in all things and always. If you remember that everything is the divine, then that is the real parameter for judging how close you are to the spirit. So now Sri Aurobindo's words. The mind is full No, this is not what I wanted to read. It's not in the PDF, but I'll read it out. I have it on my mobile. Sri Aurobindo says it is imperative to exchange this surface orientation for the deeper faith and vision which see only the divine and seek only after the divine. So he says we have a central faith that believes in appearances as they are, that believes that I am separate, Prarthana separate, Vaishali is separate, Shuli is separate, each thing is separate, and I have to interact with everything and survive it, whatever. That's the central faith we have. But there's a chair there. Sri Aurobindo says that we have to change this central faith, and y'all can come a little forward to make place at the back. Okay. So he's saying that we have to change this central faith that all is discrete objects disconnected by any sort of connecting matrix to a constant belief that everything is the divine. And quantum physics is also speaking about it, right? You often hear this typical quantum physics quotes that matter appears to be solid, but it's actually the energy of love. It pretends to be solid. So quantum physics has come up with this unified field theory, which you know about it, which says that all matter is actually one continuum. It appears to be discrete, but really all matter is one continuum. In Vedanta, we'll call this unified field Brahma, or the one God essence. But finally, whether you look at it from science or spirituality, both are saying the same thing. So Sri Aurobindo once very beautifully said, both science and spirituality are seeking God, but while science won't admit it, spirituality will. Science is also seeking the truth, right? And truth is God. But science won't admit that it's looking for God, though it is. But spirituality will. So he's saying that it is imperative to exchange this surface orientation for the deeper faith and vision which see only the divine and seek only after the divine. The next need is to compel all our lower being to pay homage to this new faith and greater vision. All our nature must make an integral surrender. It must offer itself in every part and every movement to that which seems to the unregenerated sense mind so much less real than the material world and its objects. So Sri Aurobindo knows what we are. To our sense mind, this material universe is tangible, whereas the essence, which is the divine, is not real. It's not real to our seeing. So we have to develop in that sense a sixth sense to intuit this presence in all things. And Sri Aurobindo says Smaran is very important. Malvika, can you come so that I can see you somewhere? I like to see all of you. Come forward here. So he says that Smaran is a very important aspect, because the Gita says Yoya Shraddha Sa Eva Sa, whatever is your faith will become your living truth. So constantly feed the faith through remembrance that all is the divine, that nothing out there really threatens, because everything is the divine. And divine doesn't mean a God sitting on a mountain. Divine means who I really am. So everywhere it's an extension of myself and my deepest and highest. So in that sense, nothing out there really threatens. So Sri Aurobindo uses a beautiful phrase in Savitri to live with the intimacy of God everywhere. How you feel intimate with God? If God is everywhere, you feel intimate with everything. Nothing is really a stranger to you. And when I'm dealing with my staff, when I'm dealing with anyone, if somewhere there's something that constantly reminds me that this is also God, I should treat this person, this thing, this material, not just living things. Mother says that even this floor, even this pillow, everything is the divine. And in fact, for a being like the mother or sages, this was a very living experience once in the ashram when the mother was making rounds, and she went to one ashram department which hurriedly cleaned up everything and dumped the junk in a corner. And mother got out of the car and she went straight to that corner which was somewhere else to where the junk was dumped. And the caregiver said, Mother, I'm very sorry I did this, but how is it that you got out and first went to that corner? She said, because you think that the things you dump don't have a life. But as soon as I got out of the car, they told me, see mother, see how badly we are being treated. It's not that they will talk, but there is an energy communication between everything. So anything that I treat badly, even a material thing, there's a presence in it which gets violated. So to live as if everything without exception is that divine. Then of course the usual question will come, okay, it's good enough to see the divine in bright, happy, beautiful things, but why would the divine be in things that are ugly, pain-giving? Why would the divine give me pain through that person? It's a legitimate question, and one way or the other we keep coming back to it every class. So any answers? To grow, yes. Yes?
It's not really pain, it's just that it helps us take the better path that is honest.
Okay, so to grow, to take you along a better path, but so actually think of somebody who is obnoxious. And you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say, only when there is darkness you appreciate light.
Yes, yes.
That's how when there is little bit bad, if you don't see good in the small things, you won't appreciate anything in life.
Yes, but my question is that, okay, think of somebody really obnoxious in your life. Can you all think of that? Yeah? Can you wrap your mind around the fact that this being is also the divine? How can you accept that? Then why would the divine in the being give you so much pain or create so many hurdles in your path?
Like she said, to grow, to progress.
To help you grow, to help you progress. And Sri Aurobindo writes that God is so powerful that he can choose to be weak when it suits his purposes. So God is so compassionate that he can choose to appear lacking in compassion when it suits his purposes. He can become this person who's appearing to be cruel, not compassionate, whatever, if it suits his purposes for your growth. So Neil Donald Walsh very beautifully writes about a metaphor. You've read his Conversations with God? Note it down, another beautiful book. Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God. So he writes that in the angel realm, in the spirit realm, all spirits are angels. Now suppose angel A looks down at earth and says, oh, I see that earthling experiencing the pain of betrayal. Now I don't know what that feels like. I want to experience it. Will you come down to earth and give me that experience? And angel B tells angel A, sure, I love you, and if you want that experience, I'll give it to you, but don't forget who I am. And they go down with this pact, but when they come down on earth, they both forget this pact. And actually B is only giving A the experience A needs, but we forget that. So it always helps to remember that Even if a person's appearing really terrible to me, he's only giving me the experience that my soul wants, because nothing comes without the invitation of my soul. Of my soul, not my vital or my mental. My mental vital will not want such horrible experiences, because the mental vital suffers. But at the level of the soul, there's no suffering. So the soul is never scarred by any experience. So it's not afraid of experiencing the darkest things. So now these are words of M.P. Pandit. The mind is full of thoughts. We always run with thoughts. The emotional being is full of emotions. We flow with them. Desires arise. We allow ourselves to be driven by it. This is what is called getting lost in nature, in Prakriti. To be carried away by our thoughts, by our emotions. If I learn to observe and stand back a little, I see that these thoughts are not me. The thoughts may come and float in my mind, but it is only when I accept them that they become my thoughts. He's saying something very, very important and beautiful. So I'll just remind you of Sri Aurobindo's experience from which this is drawn. Sri Aurobindo, before he was put into Alipur jail and all that, he wanted to learn yoga from a yogi to uplift his country, because as we know, he was a great patriot and he'd seen the power of yoga. So he wanted to learn yoga to lend power to his freedom struggle. So he met a yogi, Bhaskar Lele, in Baroda, and the yogi told him a very simple thing: no thought is yours, it comes to you from outside. See that and don't let the thought enter. Now if somebody tells you that, what will you do with it? Nothing really. But this was Sri Aurobindo. So he sat on that famous swing in Baroda, which if you go there you can see, and he shut his eyes and he actually saw thought bubbles coming to him from outside, and he stopped them. And in 3 days he achieved a completely silent mind. What had taken the Buddha 10 years, he did it in 3 days. That is not to say Sri Aurobindo was better than the Buddha. I would say each avatar, Sri Aurobindo is just Buddha come back more equipped, because he had to do a greater work in evolution at this period in time. So that's what Sri Aurobindo's experience. So that's what M.P. Pandit is telling us, that thoughts actually flow like a sea of Prakriti. If you make a thought your own, only then it affects you, and only then you experience the karma of thinking it. Karma begins with thought, right? If you don't own a thought, no karma applies to you. Like a thought comes, but you just let it be. You regard it as something outside you. It's not your thought. Then no karmic consequence accrues to you. So in yoga, it's very important to have this capacity to be a third person to your thought. I think we spent a large chunk of last Saturday exploring this possibility, how to be a third person to your thought. And actually there is a third person to your thoughts in you. When you're identified with thoughts, you think you are your thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. You are the witnessing presence. So I was doing it with my 10th standard kids last week. I was fascinated with their answers. So I took them through an experience of watching the thoughts, and one of them told me it felt like I was eavesdropping on a conversation. That means there's a conversation happening and I wasn't part of it. I was the one who was eavesdropping on it. I was listening to it, but I wasn't a part of it. So there's always a part of you which is outside the conversation of thoughts, just watching it. Now, if you do that, you'll save yourself a lot of suffering. Why am I saying that? When you're part of a conversation which is unpleasant, you don't have perspective, right? For example, if this is stuck to my eye, I can't really see it for what it is. If I can't see it, I don't have the right view about it. If I'm identified with those voices in my head, I have no perspective. They can run amok in my head and I'll believe everything they are saying. I'll be like Mullah Nasruddin. It'll tell me your wife is having an affair, and without thinking I'll believe it. Whatever, take it as that person's against you, that person is always putting you down, whatever. It's like Mullah Nasruddin being told he's married and he believes because there's no perspective. But when you step out of the stream of your thinking, when you become a third person to your thoughts, it's beautiful how you see things as they are, the right view. 2-3 classes back we did a session on the right view. You cannot have the right view of anything when you're identified with your thoughts. To have the right view, it's very important to be able to step back, be a third person to your thoughts and witness the thoughts as if you're outside them. So that's what MP Pandit is referring to. If I learn to observe and stand back a little, I see that these thoughts are not me. The thoughts may come and float in my mind, but it is only when I accept them that they become my thoughts. Emotions flow from all sides. Only when I identify myself with the emotions do they become mine. I am different from the flow of Prakriti, anger, hatred, passions, restlessness, excitement, agitation. They are all movements of Prakriti. There is something else in me which observes these things, which can witness them without getting involved in them. Thus I start with the mental idea that I am different. Prakriti, nature is different. Prakriti is nature, nature is thoughts and emotions, but I am different from it. That is the first step. I practice this operation when I am alone. And when I so separate, when I observe and become conscious, I see that I have also the right and the capacity to accept the thought, accept the emotion, or to reject them, which I don't have. When I'm identified with the thought of or emotion, there's no capacity to reject it. But if I'm a third person, like I gave you a metaphor last class, a great way to stay anchored in the witness poise is to start by witnessing what is easiest to witness. What is easiest to witness? Breath, absolutely. It's neutral. I mean, you've got to be pretty crazy to get attached to your breath or averse to your breath. It's so neutral. You can just be present to it. So witnessing the breath strengthens the witnessing muscle. Consciousness is also a muscle. As you gym, as you strengthen physical muscles, different exercises of the mind strengthen muscles of consciousness. So as you start witnessing the breath, you're strengthening the witness poise. And then I gave you that example that you're on a beach and thoughts are like an ocean of Prakriti. It's murky, it's agitating. At every moment you have the choice of stepping into the ocean and getting agitated by thoughts, or stepping into the witnessing shore of your breath and remaining peaceful. So if you're with the breath and a thought comes, it's not stuck to your vision. Since there's a distance, you see it clearly. And you have the capacity to say that I don't want to go there. This was told to me by a person, a young boy who had these very deep experiences in Pondicherry on his first visit, and he said that without expecting anything, such a silence descended on him, and it kind of stayed with him for a long time. And then one day, when he got a trigger which would normally pull him into that typical negative mind state, he described it. He said that old feeling of attachment and all felt like an ocean coming towards me, and I knew I had the choice of stepping into it and getting inundated by that old formation or stepping out, and I chose to step out. And all of us can do that. We have that minute, but we have that choice if we've somewhere strengthened that muscle of the witness poise. If we've made it a habit of being with the breath, then what did any of you practice from last week's class? Yeah, Mai, what was your, would you like to come here and share? Because they won't hear you, I mean on the video.
So my experience was that I tried watching the breath when it was relatively easier, when nothing special is going on or nothing that is anxiety causing or difficult is going on. That kind of laid the plinth for what was to follow. Normally I do get tensed when I think about the future, maybe plan for classes, but because the plinth was solid, maybe from Saturday, Sunday onwards, this week I was a little better off, and things that normally seemed challenging didn't seem as challenging.
So when agitating thought came, how did you deal with it, or it didn't come at all?
It did come. I wasn't able to deal with it once, but then I got back to the breath. Later on I was able to make peace with what had happened, with what had agitated me. But when it did come up, I think just prior to that I wasn't as aware, wasn't with the breath. Later on it did settle, but yeah, I couldn't say that I was there, but towards the end of the week it got better. I think, like you said, it is like a muscle that you need to build, you need to work on. Initially you might feel that it is challenging, it like the muscle hurts when you're doing some reps, but later on it does, whatever effort you put in, it does pay you back, is what I felt.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There was a beautiful quote that under any and every circumstance, your only protection is spiritual wisdom. Under any and every circumstance, what finally bails you out is the wisdom of your spirit. And all of us have experienced that, right? There is something else in me which observes these things, which can witness them without getting involved in them. Thus I start with the mental idea that I am different. Prakriti, nature is different. Thoughts and emotions are different. They are Prakriti. I am different from them. It's a mental idea first. This is the first step. I practice this operation when I am alone. And when I so separate, when I observe and become conscious, I see that I have also the right and capacity to accept the thought, accept the emotion, or to reject them. Only I do not become conscious of my power to accept or reject as long as I allow myself to be driven, to be flooded by nature. It is when I separate from Prakriti that I become conscious of the choice that I have. I exercise that choice in favor of the divine. I reject movements that contradict the divine. That is the way to separate myself from Prakriti, assert my control over Prakriti, and later achieve mastery over Prakriti. The traditional yoga stops at separating from Prakriti. Thereafter, I go on saying I'm not the movement, I'm not Prakriti. Prakriti can go on doing what it will, but I am unaffected. The Sankhya, the Vedanta stop with dissociating from nature. But Sri Aurobindo asks, citing from the Gita, to open the further possibility. First, I am the Sakshi, witness, then Anumanta, the one who sanctions, who consents, and once I get into the state of the sanctioner, I go one step further and become the master of nature, Ishvara. So, Vedanta and Sankhya stop at Sakshi Bhav. But Sri Aurobindo says if you go deeper into the Sakshi Bhav, it becomes the Anumanta, the giver of sanction. You have the power to sanction this particular thought if it's good for me. And if it's not good for me, I'm not going to feed it. I'm not going to let it enter me. That ocean, I don't step into it. And eventually I become the master of nature, Ishvara. This is a logical development of a movement that starts with the separation of Purusha from Prakriti. In becoming conscious of the inner Purusha, I slowly grow aware of the divine presence within myself. So even now, all of us are the divine presence. But we are not conscious of it because we are too caught up with our thoughts. So the moment I develop the right relationship with thoughts, where I'm not consumed by them, the gates of my inner world start opening. I come in touch with who I really am. In becoming conscious of the inner Purusha, I slowly grow aware of the divine presence within myself. A question received today is very relevant at this point, and that is, what is meant by installing the divine presence in the heart, as Sri Aurobindo writes? Somebody asked, what does it mean to install? Like you install a divine presence in a temple, but if I am the temple, what does it mean to install the divine presence here? Is the presence not always in the heart? The presence is there, not only in the heart, but in everything. The divine is omnipresent, but it is possible to be more easily aware of the divine presence in myself than in this thing or in that thing. It is easier for me to become conscious of the divinity within myself than in something outside of me, because I'm alive for myself. I'm not conscious enough to sense the living presence perhaps in the floor, but I'm alive to myself. So it's easiest to start by sensing the divinity in myself. Whatever happens in me, I'm keenly conscious of it. In myself also, there is a place where I can be more easily conscious of the divine presence, and that is in the core of the heart. There is a special concentration of divine consciousness in the chamber of the heart, nothing to do with the physical organ heart. Mother refers to the seat of divine consciousness at the center of the chest. Though the divine is spread out all through, and theoretically it must be possible to become aware of the divine in any part of oneself, in practice it is more easy to become aware and contact the divine in the heart, because as is said in all traditions of the world, Eastern or Western, modern or ancient, the heart is the place where the divine deposits itself layer after layer and becomes the individual divine. There is no doubt a universal divine, but in each form also there is an individual divine, and the individual divine locates itself as a focus in the heart. The question is, if the presence is always there in the heart, what does installing the divine presence mean? It means, though the divine is there, we are not aware of it. To find ways and means of becoming aware of the divine in oneself in the heart, make that awareness constant, unceasing, unveiled by clouds of any kind, always active, always dominant. That is what is called installing the divine presence in the heart, establishing a constant awareness of the divine presence in the heart. So I often hear people who are devotees of the mother, especially the young ones, they often complain that I wish mother was in the body. When I don't know what to do, I could just go to her and she'd tell me what to do. Now I just don't know what to do. But if we connect with her in the heart, she is there and she is available to us 24/7. And it would be so wonderful if we didn't have to depend on the polar oscillations of the mind, which now tell me this is right, 1 hour later the opposite is right, and I'm so confused. But the guidance from the divine in the heart, it is so sure, it is so direct, there's no question, and it doesn't follow a logic. You can't logically explain why it is so, but there's no confusion when you make a contact with this presence in the heart, and it's constantly guiding you. So MP Pandit is saying that when you can constantly communicate with this presence in the heart, constantly feel its guidance, constantly feel its light and joy and peace, that's when you've really installed the presence. The presence is already there. It's like even in a temple, when you bring an idol and they say we are doing pran pratishtha, the first emanation into the idol is the sculptor who makes it. What is the consciousness with which he's made it? So metaphorically, if I am the temple, what is the past I've come with? Have I come already with an openness to the divine? That's the first thing. Second is, when the idol comes, the devotee invokes the divine with aspiration and prayer. And third, the divine response. So in me also, if there is a living idol, in Savitri there are those beautiful lines, a living image seated in the heart and a silence overhead. It's the description of a good meditation, a living image seated in the heart and a silence overhead. So that image is there, but how living is it? It becomes living when I constantly aspire, when I constantly try to communicate with it, when I constantly believe in its existence more than what my senses tell me. Yeah, what Sri Aurobindo said at the beginning, we have to change our central faith from believing what our senses tell us to this belief that everything is the divine. To become so conscious of the divine is a major part of the sadhana, because once that is done, the whole complexion of the sadhana changes. There is no further serious obstruction from nature. Once we recover our status in the divine center in the heart, we have arrived at a point from where we walk on the sunlit path. Mother says her yoga is the sunlit path, constantly lit from the sun in your heart. But you have to be in touch with that sun in the heart for it to light your way. And that's also a muscle of consciousness. If witnessing poise is one muscle of consciousness which develops with practice, concentration in the heart and aspiration is another muscle of consciousness. Now we come to silence, speech and truth. Much stress is laid in this path on silence. This silence is not physical silence. Physical silence can be very oppressive at times. The silence that we speak of in yoga or in any kind of spiritual discipline is a spiritual silence which can be there even when we are talking or when we are working. And from where does this silence come? Silence is a state of static holding of consciousness. Sri Aurobindo says one can experience the silence by vacating the mind, by ridding the mind of thought movements, its restless activities, but it is difficult. It is more easily achieved by a descent, and this is what makes Mother and Sri Aurobindo's yoga so special. So we all know that once Mother took charge of the ashram, for decades Sri Aurobindo was in his room. Yeah, he only stepped out during darshan days, and day and night what was he doing? He was working to bring down this very special vibration into the earth atmosphere called the supramental force, which would make spiritual evolution of beings much easier. And it came down after he left his body. We all know he left his body in 1950, and in 1956 there was that descent into the earth atmosphere. So that descent makes it very easy for us to grow spiritually. Normally we got peace in olden yogas through a lot of tapasya, a lot of silencing. But coming down of the Mother, and we've discussed that Mother is the Adi Shakti, the first force that held creation together, and she was working for 900 years on the occult planes to create a body in which she could descend. And having descended on earth, she has made spirituality so much more accessible to humanity. So we have to just call peace and the peace descends. So that is Sri Aurobindo's triangle symbol, the upward triangle, humanity's call for higher things, and the downward triangle, the descending grace and answer. So now we come back to keep this in mind as we read this. From where does the silence descend? Is there a particular corner in heaven from which silence flows like rain? Silence backs up every activity. Wherever there is activity, activity of speech, activity of thought, any kind of expression, there is always behind it a supporting silence. There are a million forms in this universe. Over each form there is a zone of silence. There is a zone where our consciousness is centered, held above, and that is the station of what is called the oversoul. If we have a soul within, we have also an oversoul above, and we have also an oversoul above, and that accompanies us wherever we go, whatever we do. So when we speak of guidance from above, it does not mean from somewhere in the sky, but above our own self. Once we have this conception of an overhead silence, we find it easier to contact it, call it to come into us, that consciousness of silence, with all the peace that goes with it, is always there, overseeing our evolution and our growth. And the moment we call it, there is a response. It is not an impersonal peace to which we appeal. It is something that stands there above and guides. Whether we are aware of it or not, responds when we call it with faith. Let's actually do it. So just to share with you, years ago when I was teaching at your school, there was one girl who used to get very nervous during her exams, and she would keep cancelling, keep rewriting, and though she was very clever, she never scored. And I taught her this bringing down the piece from overhead. Now I'm not saying that everyone I teach it to gets it, it depends on each one's opening, but she was open, she got it. And it worked very well for her, and whenever she'd feel agitated, she'd just call down this piece from overhead, and from there her marks improved by leaps and bounds, and she, that was her antidote to agitation. So let's try it. So sit up straight. Put your right hand at the center of your chest, left palm over it, and go deep into your heart space. Gather all the scattered threads of your awareness and plunge them into your heart, not the physical organ heart, but center of the chest. Just go deeper and deeper inside, not by pushing, but just by offering yourself, and there's a presence inside waiting to pull you in when you just make yourself available. This is the center of aspiration in you. And this aspiration is not a mental desire, it comes from somewhere beyond the mind. Now inhale, let that aspiration climb to the overhead space and just wait there. See what you sense over the head. There's a realm of peace, the mother's presence, waiting over the head to descend if an opening is created in the Aadhar. Aspiration creates that opening. So inhale, enter the heart and climb up towards that cloud of peace overhead. Exhale, say the word peace. The mother says, call the peace into you as if it were living, as if you were calling a dear long lost friend home. Peace, 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 peace. Keep repeating the word peace till the word also falls away and you feel that descent of peace and stillness from the region above your head, from the region above your head. See if you can slowly open your eyes but still feel that descent. So did you feel something from above the head? Yeah? Something? No? Okay.
Can it happen on and off?
Yeah, it happens on and off. See, sometimes you won't feel it as a sensation because your nervous system is not attuned to, like if I do this, my nervous system can sense it. But this peace is so subtle that your nervous system may not feel it like a physical sensation. But you may feel your thoughts slowing down. You may feel a sense of peace, even though you have, some of us feel it very physically because it is a material substance, but a very subtle substance. But some of us may not feel it materially, but still you may feel your thoughts slowing down and a kind of peace settling into you. So of course you'll feel it much more easily in this space, because this space has a very special atmosphere, which is why I encourage you. Saturdays, of course, we have our session, but the centers open 10 to 1 and 3 to 7 all days except Sundays. Just come and sit here. It's magical how this place has something that can really change you and so change your life. So, during meditation, during contemplation, when we are quiet or when we are disturbed, if we want that silence, that shanti, we should not strain. We should not tense but just relax. If we strain too much to call it down, we close ourselves to it. So there is a loosening of ourselves and the silence enters. In other words, we can't catch that silence. We have to allow it to get into us. No, it's so beautiful. We can't snatch or catch that silence. We have to just loosen and allow it to get into us. So again, those celebrated lines from Savitri, this light comes not by struggle or by thought. In the mind's silence, the transcendent acts, and the hushed heart hears the unuttered word. All that we have to do is not to get impatient, not to be restless, but to call with confidence, with trust and wait. For most of us, we feel it's too good to be true. Yeah, I'm being told to do that, but we start only thinking, I'm not going to feel it. It won't happen to me. Such a thing can't happen to me. That very negative faith closes our doors to it. We must have a mental idea that there is a sea of silence, and when we utter, whether physically or mentally, shanti, 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 or peace in whatever language, that word itself has an intensity of power, and it acts like a button, and there the silence is present. This is what is called a descent of silence. And it is by descent of silence that more is achieved than by a labored vacating of the mind. If you just call down the silence, you achieve much more than hours of laboring to silence the mind. And it is only as we allow ourselves to be held by the silence, filled by that silence, that we can get a taste of spiritual consciousness. Whenever we meditate, whenever we are alone, it is always an interesting experiment to relax and allow that silence to enfold us, to get into us. It does not stay very long, no doubt, because our system is always accustomed to movements, to doing things, activity. We have become part of it, so we feel it unnatural if we don't do things physically. If we don't think successively, we imagine it's a state of vacuum. We have been so alienated from truth, from our soul, that we find the artificiality of life as natural. Actually, to be doing nothing and yet be silent, yet be quiet, is a feat. I would relate to you here an incident in Sri Aurobindo's life. Long before, somewhere in 1923-24, before the ashram was formed, when Sri Aurobindo was receiving visitors, there was a batch of some visitors from Maharashtra who are renowned for their practical bent of mind. One of them foolishly asked Sri Aurobindo, "What are you doing here?" Because he never left his room, remember? Sri Aurobindo answered him quietly, "Nothing." Some of them laughed, but one of them said, "But to be doing nothing is a great thing." Sri Aurobindo quoted that remark much later. He valued that appreciation, that to be able to do nothing outwardly and yet not to be idle, not to vegetate, is an achievement. Activity need not always be outward, external. All action is an output of energy, whether it is mental, spiritual, or physical. From a certain standpoint, all is in action. That is why the Gita says, he who sees action in inaction and inaction in action is a wise man. Otherwise, when we see somebody furiously active, we say he is active. But when we see a man keeping quiet, we say he is not active. But that is not the truth of things. So a great example is the famous cyclone in Pondicherry. Most of us know this. We know that Pondicherry has quite strong annual cyclones. And once when Sri Aurobindo was in his body, there was this terrible cyclone that came and trees were falling and everything was going awry. And mother went to Sri Aurobindo's room thinking she would shut the windows, because Sri Aurobindo would be so absorbed that he may not have shut the windows. But when mother went to Sri Aurobindo's room, she said there was such a solid peace around the Lord that not even a curtain was fluttering. Now, can you imagine that? Outside the wind is making trees fall, the windows are open, but in his room not even a curtain is fluttering. So do you call that inaction or action? What a powerful action that peace took, that it could keep out the fury of a cyclone. If we had a little bit of that peace, just holding that peace, how much we change our environment. We think we have to rebel and fight, and yes, there is a place for all that, but sometimes just by holding our peace, we change the environment. Yes? Can you speak into the mic?
But how would you hold on to that peace when you're in a state of activity, because you don't always have access to like a silent place? So like if you're busy and you're doing something, or you're in like a very stimulating environment, how can you still achieve that level of peace?
So I said even peace is a muscle of consciousness. If you want 6 packs, you work your core muscles every day to get it. If you want this solid peace in daily life, you have to set aside a time where you work the muscle of peace, where you invite the peace in, where you remain quiet in whatever way comes to you. Then once you've strengthened that muscle, when a load is put on it, when there's tension, excitement, activity, the muscle is strong enough. Otherwise, it's not strong enough to carry the load of stress. Yeah. And what's important is you should want the peace. Majority of humanity wants excitement. It doesn't want peace. And it's not that you can't have fun. In fact, you can have maximum fun when you're anchored in that peace, because it will be undiluted fun. Otherwise, you're having fun and one agitating thought and you can't enjoy the evening anymore. But if you're anchored in that peace, you can have the real fun of life. Action is when there is a movement of energy, and this movement can go on the surface even when we are stationed in silence. If we are anchored in silence, the work goes on better. The quality of things improve and we have a greater control. As the mother says, we are not fatigued at the end of the day's work. That's another thing. If we do things with a noisy mind, we get tired very fast. But if we do activity with that silent support from behind, we don't get so tired at the end of the day. If we have achieved a silent poise within, whatever our activity, we find we are not tired, not fatigued, but remain fresh. This is the secret of silence, which is an inner silence and not an outer silence. Oh, this was the passage I was looking for. It's been put in the wrong place, but I'll read it because it's very beautiful. Remember what I read out from my mobile? This is the whole passage, Sri Aurobindo. The first necessity is to dissolve. It's from Synthesis of Yoga, page 72. The first necessity is to dissolve that central faith and vision in the mind, which concentrated on its own development and satisfaction and interests in the old externalized order of things. It is imperative to exchange this surface orientation for the deeper faith and vision, which see only the divine and seek only after the divine. The next need is to compel all our lower being to pay homage to this new faith and greater vision. All our nature must make an integral surrender. It must offer itself in every part and every movement to that which seems to the unregenerated sense mind so much less real than the material world and its objects. Our whole being, soul, mind, sense, heart, will, life, body must consecrate all its energies so entirely and in such a way that it shall become a fit vehicle for the divine. This is no easy task, for everything in the world follows the fixed habit, which is to it a law and resists a radical change. And no change can be more radical than the revolution attempted in integral yoga. The revolution of consciousness, that's the most radical revolution humanity has encountered. Everything in us has constantly to be called back to the central faith and will and vision. What is the central faith and will and vision? Huh? Everything is the divine. Every thought and impulse has to be reminded in the language of the Upanishad that that is the divine Brahma and not this which men here adore. Now these are MP Pandit's words. To know that we are progressing, we do not need to get certificates from others. We watch ourselves. How do we react to things, to contacts, to people? We started with the question put to Mother that what is the one thing that will tell me that I'm on the spiritual path? And what had Mother replied? Huh? The awareness of divine in everything. Now here, a similar question was put to MP Pandit. How do we know I'm progressing? So he's saying you don't need certificates from others. Watch yourselves. How do we react in a way? Do we react in a way we did 10 years ago or before we took to yoga, or is there a difference? Do we feel vengeful, hateful if somebody abuses us? Or do we take it as a movement of ignorance to which we should not respond in ignorance? How are you responding to the difficult people in your life? How are you responding to the good people in life? Someone observed that we say love your enemy, but do we even love our friend properly? Or does our ego keep getting in the way of even loving that? Do we love our dear ones, or do we keep quarreling with them? So if somebody flatters us, is there a vibration of satisfaction, happiness, though we know it is flattery and not true? So on media, if we get those 100 likes, we know it's not true. Half the people may not have even seen our whole video, but because I give them likes, they will give me likes. So if somebody flatters us, is there a vibration of satisfaction, happiness, though we know it is flattery and not true? Are we able to meet life situations with equality without losing our peace of mind? Or are we involved in the rat race, getting upset over every little thing, living what we call the life of a creature, not even a human being, a creature? It is in the ordinary day-to-day life, its incidents, accidents, that we know who we are. to have wonderful visions, hear marvelous sounds during hours of meditation, but to behave like any other unregenerate or unawakened man in non-meditational hours has no meaning in spiritual life of our types. So we have such wonderful role models to look at. I mean, how many people were nasty as nasty it can be to the mother? There's this story of how, mother never pandered to people's egos, because she said, if I pander to your ego, I'll be a traitor to your soul. I can't do that. So sometimes some egos really reacted to her. And there was one person who became very anti-mother, and he paid a boy to go on the streets and shout "Nakli mother ki jai," victory to the fake mother. Now that's really public humiliation, and of course the ashram was full of devotees for whom the mother was their world, and they took it very badly, and they said that mother, you have to take action, you can't allow this man to be here, etc., etc. She said, just ignore it. Those who are talking about this are worse than the man who's spreading the rumor. And she then then of course this man was going through a phase. He changed. When he fell sick, mother looked after this man. She sent doctors to him. She never took anything personally. I mean, that was the kind of equality and love she had. This is one example, but there are hundreds like that. She never lost her love for her children, no matter what they did. It's not that she wouldn't correct them, but she had her own ways of correcting them. The mother once recalled an incident narrated to her by Madame Alexandra Neil, who was an old friend of hers in France. She died recently when she was 106 years old, Madame Alexandra Neil, quite a famous person. This lady was the first foreigner to get entry into old Tibet. Normally they did not allow any, but somehow she succeeded. Those were the war times. But she succeeded in getting entry. She had many occult powers. Once when she was walking in the forests in Indochina, it was her hour of meditation. So she just closed her eyes and continued to walk meditating. When her meditation was over and it was time to return, she started back with her eyes open, but found there was a stream of water on the route. She wondered how she had crossed it. Obviously, in her meditation, she had crossed over the water without any mishap. Now, when she came to India later, she met the mother and spoke of her visits to various saints, yogis of India. She told how one guru had asked her whether she had attained equality. Yes, she said. If somebody criticizes you, you don't feel anything? No, I don't feel anything. And she said it truthfully. He was very pleased and he complimented her. But then in an aside to the mother, she observed, luckily he didn't ask me how I felt if somebody were to compliment me, for I couldn't have truthfully said that I was not affected. So she wasn't affected by criticism, but compliments still got to her. Ideally, we should be equanimous to both, not very excited when we get complimented and not feel criticized. It's a beautiful thing. Mother says that we all attach too much importance to what people think of us. And she says it in so many places, that don't care about what people think of you. Care only about your relationship with the divine, because only the divine knows who you really are. Anyone else thinking you're this or that, they don't know the real you. So always when you feel hurt because you think he's thinking so badly of me, just remind yourself, but mother knows what I am, and I'm beautiful in her eyes. That's good enough. Okay, so now this comes to the individual self, my Atma, again MP Pandit's words. My Atma, the self as related to my formation, your Atma, everybody's Atma is the same. That is why when you realize yourself, you really achieve unity with others at the level of the self. Note, however, that above, below, back lose their distinction. Beyond a certain range of experience, all is realized as one. Now this self Atma puts forward a projection, a part of it, you can say, a deputy in the movement of evolution. First, it's a small spark, the essence. Gradually it develops into an entity. That entity again develops into a small being. This is loosely called the soul, and in Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, it's termed the psychic being, the psychic essence, the psychic entity. So it is a small, it's a mini self. The Upanishads describe it as a dwarf hardly more than the thumb of the man, Angusht Matra. It's as small as the thumb of the man in the heart. It is not that it is exactly that size, but it is a way of saying that it is of a tiny shape. This psychic entity, psychic being grows life after life, and it supports the physical being, the vital being, the mental being from within. It is the soul of the three. So this supports your mind, your emotions, your body. This psychic is the real soul that journeys from birth to birth, grows in each life experience till it reaches a state where it gets united with the central being above, the oversoul above. So this is called the Chaitya Purush in Sri Aurobindo's language, the psychic being, and this is called the Jivatma, which is above. This is the famous union of the soul with the oversoul. The psychic, being a spark of the divine, slowly evolving through life, puts out of itself the stuff of the divine consciousness. In spite of so much division and obscurity, through all selfishness, self-centeredness, ego, the psychic puts forward its element of love. The very nature of the psychic is love. A devotion comes naturally to one who is open to the psychic influence. The psychic is thus the Antaratma, the soul in evolution. The Jivatma is static. It supports the growth of the psychic, but psychic grows lifetime to lifetime. It's the part of your soul which evolves from life to life. There is a part of the soul that is not involved in evolution, and that is the self. That portion which is involved in evolution and grows is the psychic. In Sanskrit, we call it Chaitya Purush. The physical person is called the Annamay Purush, made up of Anna, matter. The vital, the Pranamay Purush, made up of prana, and the mental, the Manomay Purush, made up of thought. And now this is a gorgeous passage from Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, which actually paints an image of the psychic. I often feel when I read Savitri that he's painting with words, because as you read Savitri, the words actually create beautiful images in your mind. So here he's painted the whole image of the psychic presence in each of us. Abandoned it lay. It is the psychic being, alone, imperishable, immobile with excess of passionate will. Now Sri Aurobindo plays with words where opposites are used. Now in the same sentence, immobile is used and passion is used. Normally we associate passion with movement and action, but the psychic is immobile. It's a state of silence with excess of passionate will. The passionate will is your aspiration. Somewhere else in Savitri, he describes the presence of the mother in us as a heart of silence in the hands of joy. A hand is a karma indriya, it acts, but a heart of silence in the hands of joy. So it's beautiful for students of English also. It's fantastic, his usage of English language. Immobile with excess of passionate will. This is Ashwapati, Savitri's father, but take it as yourself, because Savitri is about us also. His living, sacrificed and offered heart, absorbed in adoration mystical, turned to its far off fount of light and love. So mother says that your psychic being is like a sunflower. You know how a sunflower always follows the sun? Even if your outer being is turned towards darkness, the psychic is like the sunflower. It's always facing the light. So turned to its far off fount of light and love. In the luminous stillness, shining stillness of its mute appeal. Its appeal is always aspiration for the divine. The psychic is the center of aspiration. In the luminous stillness of its mute appeal, it looked up to heights it could not see, because the psychic is at the end covered with so many veils of mind and matter. So it's longing, but the whole divine truth is veiled from it. It looked up to the heights it could not see. It yearned from the longing depths it could not leave. The depths is, so the psychic is the bridge between spirit and matter. So the matter has the subconscious and everything in it. So Sri Aurobindo in one sonnet on the tree, he says, a tree standing besides a sandy shore lifts its topmost boughs in prayer towards skies it cannot reach. Body and brain, hungry for the earth, its heavenly flight detain. So each of us is like that tree. Our boughs are reaching out for the heaven, but our roots are stuck in the mud of matter, are inconscient, everything else. So body and brain, hungry for the earth, its heavenly flight detain. So a similar thing is expressed here. It looked up to the heights it could not see. It yearned from the longing depths it could not leave. In the center of his vast and faithful trance, halfway between his free and fallen selves. His free self is the spirit. His fallen self is matter entrenched in ignorance. Interceding twixt God's day. God's day is the spirit, and mortal's night. Mortal's night is the ignorance of matter. So the psychic being is constantly interceding between spirit and matter, twixt God's day and the mortal's night. Accepting worship as its single law, so beautiful. While the mind will follow so many different laws, the only law the psychic follows is love for the divine and worship. Accepting worship as its single law. Accepting bliss as the sole cause of things. Refusing the austere joy which none can share. So Buddhists bypass the psychic and go into nirvana. So when you follow mother's path of the psychic, we don't want to escape into nirvana. We want to bring God's light down here into matter and bring perfection to our day-to-day living. So the psychic being will never be happy with the blank piece of nirvana. So refusing the austere joy which none can share, refusing the calm which lives for calm alone, to her it turned. Who is this her? The Divine Mother. The psychic is a child of the Divine Mother, a portion of the Divine Mother in each of us. So there's another line in Savitri saying the Divine Mother is the sun from which we kindle all our suns. So the psychic being is that sun kindled from that primordial sun which is the mother. To her it turned, for whom it willed to be. So the psychic being is always turned to the Divine Mother like a sunflower to the sun. In the passion of its solitary dream, it lay like a closed, soundless oratory. An oratory is like a place of worship. So the closer you go into the psychic being, the quieter and quieter it becomes. It's a very still space inside. So he's painting this. The psychic being is like a closed, soundless oratory where sleeps a consecrated argent. Argent is silver floor. Can you imagine deep inside you, there's this soundless chamber where no thought reaches, and the floor of that chamber is a consecrated silver floor. Silver is moonlight. Moonlight is associated with stillness. So where sleeps a consecrated argent floor, lit by a single and untrembling ray. So if we look at Matri Mandir, those of you who've seen it, you've seen the crystal at the center. It represents the psychic being, and the single ray from the sun that lights it is the ray of the divine, and the lotus pond below represents the Mooladhara chakra. So the Matri Mandir is a symbol for each of us, that the light of the divine through the psychic has to go all the way down to the roots of matter, which is the Mooladhara. So lit by a single and untrembling ray. So each of us, it's like a Matri Mandir inside us, right? It's a closed, soundless oratory. Matri Mandir is that, where sleeps a consecrated argent floor. Well, it's white in Matri Mandir, but lit by a single and untrembling ray, and an invisible presence kneels in prayer. So within us, the psychic being is like an invisible presence constantly kneeling in prayer, constantly pure in its prayer, no matter what we go through on the outside. Therefore, the Vedic rishis tell us that whatever you do, you're Nitya Shuddh, eternally pure, Nitya Tript, eternally contented, Nitya Poorn, eternally full, because you have a presence inside you which is your claim to purity, which doesn't get sullied by anything life does to you. So, Savitri was written by Sri Aurobindo to create the vibration of an Om in every line, and Mother says that if you can't meditate, no problem, just read Savitri, because Savitri takes you to that meditative state. So just shut your eyes, if you like, focus in the heart or overhead, or just listen, but listen with attention, with a quiet mind, and feel the words rather than trying to intellectually understand them. Abandoned it lay, alone, imperishable, immobile with excess of passionate will, his living, sacrificed and offered heart, absorbed in adoration mystical, turned to its far-off fount of light and love. In the luminous stillness of its mute appeal, it looked up to the heights it could not see. It yearned from the longing depths it could not leave. In the center of his vast and fateful trance, halfway between his free and fallen selves, interceding twixt God's day and the mortal's night, accepting worship as its single law, accepting bliss as the sole cause of things, refusing the austere joy which none can share, refusing the calm that lives for calm alone. To her it turned, for whom it willed to be. In the passion of its solitary dream, it lay like a closed, soundless oratory, where sleeps a consecrated argent floor, lit by a single and untrembling ray, and an invisible presence kneels in prayer. So we stop here. Folding our hands together in a namaste. Before we say our 3 Oms, we are in a very special place with very compassionate ears in the air which are listening to our thoughts. So if there is something in your heart, some guidance you seek, something you feel lost or troubled by, just speak to the Mother. May she help us to actually install the divine presence within us, so that that presence becomes our counselor, our best friend, our 24/7 companion, our inner guide, so that then we start walking what the Mother calls the sunlit path. Take a long, slow inhalation, exhale with Om.